Have you ever really stopped to think about the apps on your phone or the software you use every single day at work? How do they go from just an idea, a spark, to a real working tool? It can feel a little bit like magic, kind of chaotic, right? Well, it turns out there's a map for that journey. So let's dive in and trace that path from pure chaos to clean code.
So yeah, how does it actually happen? How does that light bulb moment transform into a complex, reliable application that maybe millions of people depend on? That's the big question we're going to tackle here. And the answer isn't magic. It's actually a pretty cool discipline.
And that discipline is called Information Systems Analysis and Design. Now, I know that sounds a little academic, but look at the key words here. Organizational process. This tells you right away it's not about some lone genius coder hammering away in a basement. No, this is a team sport. You've got business people and tech experts all working together to not just build something, but, and this is so important, to maintain it for years to come.
Now, to manage a process that complex, the industry came up with a kind of classic blueprint, a fundamental way to bring some order to all that creative chaos. It's called the Systems Development Lifecycle, or just SDLC for short. Think of it as the original, time-tested recipe for building software.
The SDLC breaks the whole thing down into 5 clear, sequential phases. You start at the top with planning. That's where you figure out the big what and why. Then you move into analysis, where you dig into all the specific details. After that, you create the actual blueprint in the design phase. And only then do you get to the building part, which is implementation. But it doesn't stop there. The journey continues with ongoing maintenance.
Okay, so let's start with phase 1, planning. This is the 30,000-foot view. Seriously, before anyone even thinks about writing code, the team gets together to figure out what the organization truly needs. They'll identify all the potential projects, figure out which ones are the most important, and lay out a high-level strategic roadmap.
Next up, phase 2, analysis. So we're zooming in now. The team takes those big ideas from the planning phase and starts to get into the nitty-gritty. What exactly does this system need to do? What are all the functions, the features, the rules? It's all about deeply understanding and organizing every single requirement. Phase 3 is design. This is where things get really cool. All those abstract requirements from the analysis phase start to become a concrete technical plan. The team basically creates the architectural drawings for the software. They map out everything from how the data will be structured to what the user screens will look like, first in a logical way, and then they decide on the actual technologies to use.
All right, now for the part everyone thinks of when they hear software development. Implementation. This is it. The developers finally get their hands on the keyboard and start writing code based on those detailed designs. But they don't just write it and ship it. No way. The system has to be rigorously tested to squash all the bugs, and then it gets installed and rolled out to the people who will actually use it.
And finally, we hit maintenance. And honestly, this is the phase people always forget about, but it might be the most important. Software isn't like a book you write and publish once. It's more like a garden. It's a living thing that needs constant attention, fixing bugs, adding new features, and making improvements to keep it healthy and useful over its entire life.
So that 5-step process, it sounds pretty perfect, doesn't it? Super logical, very orderly, a straight path from idea to reality. But in the real world, it had one huge weakness, a flaw that led to a complete revolution in how we think about building software.
See, this traditional SDLC is often called the waterfall model. Why? Because progress only flows one way, downhill, from one phase to the next. You can't go back up. And that approach is fantastic if you're, say, building a bridge. You want a fixed, unchangeable plan from the start. You definitely don't want to be changing the design halfway across a canyon, right? But here's the thing. Software isn't a bridge. It lives in this fast-paced, constantly changing world. Just imagine this. You're 2 years into a 3-year project to build a new app. And suddenly, a competitor launches a game-changing feature that everyone loves. With the waterfall model, what do? Well, you're pretty much stuck with your old plan.
And this quote really hits the nail on the head. The core issue was this. Once you finished a phase, say design, and moved on to implementation, you were basically locked in. It became incredibly difficult and expensive to go back and change things you decided on months or even years ago, even if the world had completely changed around you.
That inflexibility is what sparked the revolution I mentioned, Agile. So if waterfall is like building a bridge with a fixed blueprint, Agile is more like navigating a river in a raft. You have a destination, but you're constantly adjusting your course based on the currents.
Instead of one giant project, Agile breaks work into these small, quick cycles, maybe just a couple of weeks long. At the end of every cycle, you have a small, working piece of the software. You show it to real users, you get their feedback, and then you adapt. You use that new information to plan the next little cycle. Agile doesn't just tolerate change, it welcomes it.
Okay, so this whole idea of being more flexible in how you build software opens the door to an even bigger, more fundamental question that every company has to answer. Should you even be building this thing from scratch in the first place?
And one of the most popular alternatives is, of course, outsourcing. This is basically when a company decides, you know what, we're not experts in this, so let's hand over the responsibility for building and running this system to an outside firm that does this all day, every day. A classic example is a small company hiring another firm to handle all their payroll and HR software.
The truth is, for most companies today, it's not a simple build or buy choice. It's more of a hybrid approach, a strategic cocktail of different sources. A company might buy 40% of its software right off the shelf, build the 30% that's super unique to its business, rely on cloud services for another 20%, and then use free open source software for the rest. It's all about finding the right mix.
And the menu of options is pretty big. You can hire an IT services firm, you can buy pre-packaged software, or you could go for a massive enterprise-wide solution. Think of a single system that runs an entire company. You can use cloud providers, grab some free open-source software, or of course, you can always build it with your own awesome in-house team. But if you do decide to buy something off the shelf, you have to be a smart shopper. It's about so much more than just the price tag. You've got to ask some tough questions. Like, does it actually do what we need it to do? Is the vendor's support any good? Hey, is this vendor even going to be in business in 5 years? How easy is it to customize? And is the documentation actually helpful, or is it impossible to understand?
So, whether you build or buy, whether you go waterfall or agile, there's one last ingredient that is absolutely essential for success, and that's solid project management. This is the art of steering the ship, of making sure the whole effort gets from start to finish, hopefully on time and on budget.
And guess what? Project management actually has its own life cycle, kind of like the SDLC. You start by initiating the project, defining the goals. Then comes super detailed planning, figuring out all the tasks and timelines. Next is executing, which is putting that plan into motion. And finally, you have closing down, where you formally finish the project and review how it all went.
Now, to keep track of all those moving parts, project managers use some really powerful visual tools. You've probably seen a Gantt chart before. They're great for showing how long each task will take and seeing where tasks overlap. Then you have network diagrams, and their superpower is showing dependencies, which tasks absolutely have to be finished before other ones can even begin.
And that network diagram helps us find the single most important concept in project scheduling, the critical path. What is it? It's the longest chain of dependent tasks from the start of the project to the end. And here's why it's so critical. If any single task on that path gets delayed by even 1 day, the entire project's final deadline gets pushed back by a day. These are the tasks that have absolutely zero wiggle room. So there you have it. We've gone from the rigid blueprints of waterfall to the flexible currents of agile. We've looked at the big build versus buy decision, and we've seen the tools that keep the whole thing on track. It's the roadmap that takes a simple, chaotic idea and turns it into real, reliable code. So I guess the only question left is, now that you have the map, what's the next big idea you would bring to life?